Welcome. As I said in the previous upload, we are going to be doing the last 4 months of my tenure. No, I don't like to take a vowel survey. Of my tenure as the tester of this model in Kazakstan. Assuming all of these things still work, you can never know with computers. God, I hate that thing. This should work. I will change the screen to show the game as soon as I get it running, because it needs to be running for the thing to start. I could have done this before I actually started the recording, in hindsight, but we aren't always brilliant. I have installed some Windows updates which may have broken this game. It's possible. We'll see. Since we got confirmation from the, let's say, international community that if your currency interest rate is 5%, and your nice, also too loud, they're coming over the wall. Or in this case, through my ears. If we have a currency interest rate of 5% and an inflation of 3%, we will be ensuring that every. Don't you crash on me, and it crashed on me. Let's try this again. Windows updates tend to break the computer. Yeah, it's broken. God damn it. Let's see if I can fix this. Clusters of the world. Exception error. Okay, so new game still works. Maybe the save game is corrupted. I will try to reload it through having first started a new game. Yeah, I get the C error. See if a older save works. Could restart the whole game, but I just don't feel like it. It's, 20 hours of hard work. Hard is being relative. Okay, so it was the save game error. The second newest save game still seems to work. It works and it's in January, so I gotta play through a year. Okay, so the save game was corrupted. I will see if I can wait for maybe 3 months, 6 months, and see if this is worthwhile. So it seems like people were not content that we didn't get the whole picture of the thing, because 3 months for the last test of currency value rate may be too little to it may be too little to see if the economic growth is actually gonna work. So somebody kick this thing in the shins to get it to have the year. So that's the sense I get. Here we go. And video capture devices on top. There we go. Finally, the save game was just corrupted. And I'm getting a lot of spam about bitcoins. So there we go. Is there anything else? So here is the Kazakhstani model in all its glory. This is what we are doing. Here are all the data and all the relevant numbers. There's a couple of things that I changed in the recent version that are not now in the log because the save game got corrupted. Here's things like the public debt, the things of interest. Here's life expectancy. This is because people actually get medical care now. It's still woeful compared to countries like Japan, but it is not as bad as I might think. Child mortality is going down, but you can see we're lagging behind Ukraine and we're just ahead of Vietnam. And, it's not very good. This I have managed to stabilize, and this, but they aren't going down because we don't have effective HIV treatments yet. We have, however, managed to stop the spread of it. And since we are in election season, we can't change the laws of election, but there are a few things such as the wage of the head of state, which should be changed, but we are unable to do so at the moment. I have started the building of the high-end infrastructure and renewables, but it will take some amount of time. In fact, it will take quite a lot of time. So here is the main thing which we discussed in the astral or in the previous thing, because inflation is deducted from interest rate, and then you get the end result of how much you have per month, more or less, in your bank account based on what you do. It is not so that it is added in that interest rate is 13, and we can assume that with an inflation of 5%, you would still lose 5% instead of 13 minus 5. So we can actually reduce our interest rate significantly. And interest rate lowers economic growth quite a lot. So our growth rate is not as good as it should be. It's still pretty good, but it's not as good as it should be. There are some work-related reforms we need to do, such as this one, hour of work, which is going to slow down the economy and do some things, but people will not be worked to death. We will have a reasonable work week, which is for a developing country 5 days at 8 hours a day. And once we get a little bit more developed, we can start talking about perhaps 4 days, but that is not for the near future. I would prefer to be able to change these election rules, but you have to wait until the election is over. And these are all going through public referendums to get to the greater levels of information freedom, etc. But we will not be forcing the issue. The population needs to vote. So the things they want will go through, but the things they don't want won't go through. For example, this is not going to go through. And we have civil union, not marriage. And that was actually something that went through in the public vote, which was very good, as far as I remember. So that's the rundown. Let me know if there are anything you need to actually look at, if there's anything you want to see, so I can show it to you. But for the most part, this will be just us watching the country do its thing. Because we are doing so many of these laws at the same time, people are objecting to it. For example, freedom of expression passed, pornography failed, violence failed, sect failed, alcohol limit failed, arms failed, and so on. So you get a few of these reforms towards liberalization going through, and most of them being not going through. Then the people who want them to be liberalized will go to the street to oppose the vote, but they can't do much. For example, Association of Self-Defense Against Government's Laxist Gun Laws, which is the guys who didn't want the gun laws being liberalized, protesting that they won. So you really can't call it a protest. You can call it a celebration, perhaps. And there you go. Lasted for a day, and everybody went home. The Greens absolutely love me because this environmental budget is 0.2% of the state total budget. If you have everything at maximum, only public transport following the Kyoto protocols, tax breaks for building renewables and so on, it's still a minuscule portion of the government budget. We're not talking much. And the effect of it is this. It's going to go down. It's going down slowly, but it's going to go down. So that's the whole global warming thing. It's over. Everybody understands what's going on. And these guys kidnapped one of my journalists, and I'm going to try to disband them once. And, you do one towards me and I'll do one towards you, which I believe is fair. In that, if I do a fuck up, I expect you to do one towards me and let it rest. This ensures that people who follow me but don't actually follow me are free to do the research that need to be done and know the risk of it. The communists dislike me because I'm being liberal. The TV channels becoming private was passed, and the work week being shorter passed. We can't do voting age reform at the moment. The guys studying Russia, had to hide. These strikes are still going on. It's anti-social policy because I'm not consulting any of the ministers because of how cumbersome this game's, thing is for consulting anybody. It's not like it would be in real life. Despite our very high sport budget, we have full sports budget, and we're building a lot of sports stadiums and such. We won't build the largest one, but we built a lot of stadiums and multi-sport complexes and such. So we're doing well, but you can't expect Kazakstan to win the football championships and everything else every time. Strikers are going back to home. The homosexuals are protesting that this law didn't go through. People weren't very interested in it, but the guys that were interested voted against. And this is something that should, pass. And it did. It was the moving from a one party to a free multi-party system through a popular vote. Even with a multi-party system, in theory, in effect, the communists get 90% of the vote because people like that kind of stability. They don't like to switch quickly. They will vote to be a little bit more liberal, talk for a while, and then perhaps vote for more liberalism or not. And no, I don't want to send the army to stop that sit-in. Minister's right. We need to send the army to stop this sit-in. No. You aren't the guy they're gonna execute when the, sending of the army goes bad. I am. And these guys also, I believe, did a terrorist attack, so same. There's some strikes, but it has little effect on the economy. It has some effect, and this dropping of the growth rate is probably because we did the work week shortening. It's 37 hours, which caused the unemployment to rise because the hardest working guys are usually the corporate managers. So when we tell them that you don't get to work so overtimey, the corporations go under. And we are seeing a steady raise in GDP per capita, and every time we do these reforms towards such as shorter work week, which is what we are wanting to do, we will see a dip in the growth or GDP per capita, and then people adjust and it increases again. So we're trying to keep unrestrained greed from mucking up things so that we can get some amount of economic growth and then some amount of, I believe it's called liberalization, but not in this context, some amount of aid for the workers so they don't literally die from their burden. I don't think we should go ahead of the European Union in this, but getting to their level might be nice. Driver's license law went through, which was surprising. It is now 15. Voting age would be the same, but as I said, I can't change the voting age law during election season. So once that is done, the elections are done, then we will see. The armed forces like me because I ended up increasing the defense spending quite a bit. That's because we had a lot of old gear and we bought a tiny amount of new stuff and increased the wages a little bit and fired some soldiers and increased the commando numbers, which are very expensive. So antisocial policy. That's half because I'm not doing the government meetings and half because I'm liberalizing, which is generally considered antisocial. Youngsters with their TikTok. I'm supporting them, so it's, antisocial. You do you. I don't care. Anybody who gets upset about that stuff really needs to look in the mirror. And ministers are telling me to resign, but I'm going to continue with the shadow government, so whatever. Had a 2-year mandate, and I'm not going to be over that, and I'm also not going to be under that, because this being a simulation, we want to see what happens. No, because the health system is doing quite well. The budget is also bloaty. That's because we ended up building a huge number of hospitals and stuff like that. So here's the big question. If inflation is 5% and interest rate is 13%, you get 7% or so every year in addition in your bank account to what you invested originally. That's a bit much considering it's stifling the economic growth a bit. Understand, you're free to go. That's what I get for playing with the Eastern Bloc, if you will. Yes, I know you dislike me for playing with the Ruskies, but sometimes you gotta. This is gonna end up saving us 180 billion. So that's gonna be pretty much, it's gonna take the deficit to a better place. We're running at a deficit because when we privatized a lot of these sectors, and this actually doesn't calculate the deficit properly, but even if it did, because when we privatized a lot of the sectors, like when the unemployment rate dropped below 3%, we privatized things like the nationalized cement industry, which was a little weird that cement industry would be nationalized. We ended up spiking the unemployment because those government held things are usually a little bit less efficient than private sector in terms of manpower. So that increased the unemployment, and then we once again dropped the corporate tax and then lowered the unemployment. So everybody's working in the private sector who can be working in the private sector. And you will see that we have managed to take the public sector workers from 19% to perhaps 6%. Sweden rate, Ukraine rate, not Cuba rate. We are a bit ahead of the world average, so we have a tiny bit better economy in terms of government offices than the world average. And minimum wage is 30,000, so social solidarity allowance is 15,000, and the wages are 150,000. So minimum wage is still way lower than what you get actually working for the government, which means that government needs to be small. Sit-in is finally over. There's still strikes going on, and I think you might find this interesting. This is militarily aligned and favored countries, who likes us and who dislikes us. And this is economically who likes us and who dislikes us. This is very interesting. USA and Russia are our friends, and so is India of the superpowers. But China is, it tolerates us. It's a little bit friendly, but it's not overtly friendly. There's a couple of wars going on with the world that this game predicts will eventually occur, and that's Venezuela will have a regional war, and I believe this is Morocco and Spain will have something resembling a regional war. Occasionally, the situation between Belarus and Poland boils over, which was predicted and is actually occurring, but it seems to be somewhat rare. It does indeed occur. A good simulator will predict a lot of things. There was a snap freeze in Russia, a cold wave. Sit in improving. They were there for 40 days. That's pretty long. And no, I don't want to assassinate anybody in Lebanon. Which reminds me, since we managed to do what we were intending to do to the Lebanese thing, which was pretty bad, we can now move our guys back to industrially spying the neighboring country. Because we are primitive as heck and we need somebody else to, spy upon. Instead of having 20 countries and then 10 guys in each, which is a hassle for this game to manage, which in reality might be possible to do, we just put them all in one country. And Russia, because have you looked at the border lately? It's long and Russia is on the other side. And despite occasionally catching our spy rings, they are still quite friendly. And I'm not surprised that the guy blames us for everything. Sit-in's over. It's now 3 months in. And I'm dead hungry, but I will manage. And how about half-half? It's good. And I don't want to complain to anybody about human rights while the communists have 90% of the vote. Seems a little. So growth rate is doing pretty well. And the main component, the main indicator is going pretty well. So our economy in relation to the world economy continues to grow, because this only shows how well you're doing in relation to everybody being in a void. But if you actually look at this one, which is your share of the world GDP, you get to see how well you're actually doing. Just, it's constantly some kind of campaign going on. There was like a week there when I could change the rules. Somebody killed somebody with tarantulas. Total jihad. We will see what the intelligence services think. This I will attend. We have built a radar site, and I believe fairly close to the center there, the center of our country. I don't know why it doesn't have a larger range, but that's what you get. Kazakstan Democratic Forces also claim responsibility for the terrorist attack. And now that damn thing is on. Come on. There we go. Considering this is just a game, it's pretty good for this, but you end up seeing a lot of bugs and weird behavior. Gives you some ideas pretty well, but others it has no ability whatsoever to manage. Tuvalu had a tsunami. That's pretty bad. One of my friendly countries, I like them. We will get the 3-month budgetary estimate on the 1st of 4th, I believe, and then we will see if we still have a surplus. If we have now a deficit, then we will probably increase the value-added tax only. But that has to be with an economic growth. Okay. Okay, so it was total jihad. Time to try to dismantle them again. So economic growth is at 6%, and interest rate is pretty low. I think we could manage to build something, but I'm not sure. There's some options, but I think I prefer to wait until we get the budget estimate before splurging. Sorry. There's too many people at the lab, but that's because the new building for research hasn't been completed yet. Some of these are fully funded, like the research and sports, culture, healthcare, police, etc. But some things we can't, or in this case, don't see the need to fund, such as the unemployment services, because, like I said, unemployment was solved by corporate things. So we still have a nice budgetary surplus, which takes our debt to almost zero again. So we do this with the debt. Only loan, I believe. Oh, no loans yet. We still have a public debt, so I think that's to the corporate or private sector. So let's build a few things. A couple of wind turbines. Spread them about so no sector or no province is overpowering in one sector or dependent on one sector. Then offshore, because it's good to diversify your energy sector. When you have like 80% production from fossil, it's not a good thing. We will build some amount of these. They are very inefficient, but we will still build them. Then some solar. Solar is more efficient at the equator, and I believe this game could do with a wind map so you can see where these turbines are actually efficient. But just plop them around. I think you can actually use the better resources, the better charts on what actually is possible where. And a little bit increase in the fossil industry, but not much. And then we will build geothermal, because it's one of those nice futuristic power generation forms which we actually like. And I believe housing, we have repaired all the houses a couple of times, but they eventually get dilapidated again, so we need to repair them again. There we go. And I believe we could actually start to build a few more houses. Not much, though we can't afford much. And this will be nice. Having a high-speed train network, this will be beneficial. You to there, and from there you can use the local funding to connect to the Russian side. this to this. This is very expensive for a country that's basically struggling, but you get the gist of it. It's not perhaps beneficial to build the most expensive system of transportation, but you can build something. And let's build highways. That's good. Perhaps some multi-sport complexes. Seems about right. What else? I think nobody's complained of the ministers that they're running out of stuff, and the healthcare budget is already so bloated that I don't think I want to build more hospitals. Can change the election laws. We have enough prisons because we have enough prisons. Crime rate is going down and it's stabilizing nicely. Perhaps I shall sink the rest into geothermal. There we go. Won't be completed in my mandate time, but you'll get something. It's time to do another liberalization sweep. Call for votes and everything that is, and there we go. They don't like the idea. Laxist gun laws. We have not that panel, this panel. And we have this. We tried to do this, but it didn't pass. I don't think that the people actually want there to be no guns in the country, so I don't agree with that one. This is about 4 months in, and the indicators look pretty good. Growth rate is slowing down, but it's still pretty good. If this is the growth rate we can expect to get with these reforms, I think we are on the good side. We have grown from perhaps 0.3% of the planetary GDP to 0.33, or in this case, 0.326. And you are offering what trade? I'm not gonna go for that. Let's go 16. What do you say? Nah, still too high. Let's go 17. Okay. That's good. It still makes us money. Still better than the world market. So I will do the reform cycle now, and I can rest assured that I will be thrown out of office when I do this, because people will not vote in favor of most of these things like this. 70% against. This is completely done. I believe this is completely done. This is done. I would prefer this and this, but that's just my personal preference, because I believe that when you strike, you should not be legally allowed to damage the property of the company that you work for. Full rights of strike mean that you can technically damage the corporate structure, and I believe that may not be smart. But all is relative. These are all done. This is done. This is done. And I also believe that this should be here, but I believe that that's neither here nor there. If the people want it to be fully liberal, the government can buy a private TV channel. This is done. This is done. This is not gonna go through. You think? This is not gonna go through. You think? There's only 70% against. It's not as much as I would have thought. And we have no technology worth mentioning, but this multidisciplinary center thingamajig is going to be completed eventually. These are all fully funded. Oh, I need a university center. I didn't realize we didn't have a university. And education not without government control, not gonna go through maximum school age. They should actually be higher, raised, not lowered, because you should technically, because that's kind of, it's kind of wrongly put in the description, because this isn't like maximum age, it's required minimum for to be considered graduate. And I think, and this again with a 10-day, it's not gonna go through. Oh, it's gonna go through. Easing the status of the students, nice. Housing, I think these are all done. No, none of those. And this is not gonna go through. Nope. And I believe this would be a better option, but this is still supposed to be liberal, but I think the minimum amount of laws is what we should aim for. So let's try with no aid. Not gonna go through. And these again, I believe these should be 0, but it should be covered by social services instead. So that we should do, actually I'm gonna force vote this one. If you have a child, it's your private affair. The government doesn't get involved. This is gonna be completely outruled by me. And this I'm not even gonna propose. And no, that's full. It's full. Not gonna go through. Oh, it's gonna go through. Maybe, depending on how, that's not gonna go through. Depending on how the people feel during voting time. These services I could probably boost to maximum, such as this fight against child labor, integrating the handicaps, seeing that male-female equality works, and it's still pretty cheap. We're talking about 100 billion a year, and keep in mind that the lowering of the interest rate was on the order of 1,000 billion or so. So let's go through those. That's going to increase the budget a little. I'm not going to increase this. I think it should be a tiny bit below what you got last as a half. And this is still good. And I don't want to touch that one. And I don't want to touch that one. But this one I will increase because I decreased the child subsidy. This is still ridiculously cheap because there's almost no unemployed people in the country. And I overruled it because it was an important question. This I could probably lower, but I don't think I want to touch this when we have the unemployment where it is. And this is minimum. This I want to try. It's not going to go through. I know. And I'm not going to touch that one with a 10-foot pole. And this is not going to go through. No drugs for this country. There's very little to do here. I will try this with a 2-month lowering. May go through. And none of these are important or currently available, if you will. This is not going to go through. No. And I don't think I want to deport the illegals because we did it once and it really, got the problem solved. This I may want to do because we could still stand to have a better understanding of who's in the country, either illegally or legally, and give the best ones nationality. And if we do the other one as well, then throw the worst ones out. But the throwing out thing causes quite an international backlash. And this causes a minor domestic backlash. Let's see what Parliament thinks. Still opposed a little bit. I'm gonna overrule them. We need a better idea of who's in the country. And I don't want to subsidize people leaving, just as I don't want to subsidize people coming into the country. But this would have some effect on the number of immigrants, which is pretty high, considering that we kind of opened the borders while we deported the illegals. So perhaps a basic subsidy. Not gonna go through. This is definitely not gonna go through because people are already opposing them. Yeah, it's not gonna go through. And I believe this we did in the beginning when we had a very low unemployment and people were in prison mostly for being unemployed. We did that once to get this number to do this. Now that we have prisons that are on the reform instead of punishment scale, the number of prisoners and crime is slowly going down, but not by much. And this I'm not gonna touch with a 10-foot pole. And I'm gonna try to get back into the International Criminal Court, but it's not gonna go through. And justice is independent. We're doing the infiltration, and there's I will need to be. Oh, it's already in Kazakhstan. Yeah, we have one spy satellite, but that is pretty expensive, so we can't do more there, and it's not really a law. This we tried. This is actually this one through. This we tried because it's not really about how drunk you are. It's about the speed limits, which are, if they reduce the speed limits on trunk roads in cities and increase them on the motorways, the amount of fatalities is still going to go down. And this one's not going to go through. This is already at its lowest point. This happens if you reduce the speed in cities because most fatal accidents happen in cities. And since we also have public transportation only, it's a little bit safer. I'd want to take these numbers down. I don't like surveillance cameras. On the other hand, if we get a holographic surveillance system where where it's kind of like an AI who always watches you and you can say like, hey, I need a job tomorrow, and it gets you a job, then I would boost these to 1 million, but that's neither here nor there. These are weak because we solved the police issue by increasing their funding tremendously. In fact, you can, actually it's not, oh, there it is. It increased, ministry budget increased tremendously, but because our economic growth and state budget total increased more, the number is actually going down, and these are all good. And I believe these are all well done now, I think. But I could be wrong. I need to check the industry tab. If I recall, there is no, yeah, this I could possibly redo because everything that's technically dangerous and better to be uniform across the country is at least partially or completely nationalized, and things that are just like private individuals doing stuff is privatized. Now the interest rate is 8.5 and inflation rate is slowly going up due to the interest rate coming down. But we are still pretty good because the interest rate means that you get about 3% more yearly into your bank account, give or take. These are all good. As you see, the company tax is pretty low, so we are running out of the standard lever for controlling unemployment. So if the world economy suddenly crashes and we drop this to 0, it still won't fix the issue. But from here, you can see how much a value-added tax produces in relation to all these other taxes. So yeah, that's just there to prevent people from being dicks, and this should actually be like 200%. Deforestation tax is there for the same reason. This used to be like 3,000, but I lowered it significantly to get more tourists into the country because the value-added tax hurts tourism. So this is going down. This is to let people know that we kind of, as a country, don't like this. This is the much wanted Tobin tax, which means that every financial transaction, whatever it is, has a small tax added to it, and it still produces quite a lot at that rate. And income tax is remarkably low because it feels a little wrong to have an income tax when you can just do it with value-added tax. And this deficit number doesn't seem to be real. I don't know. I would expect that we wouldn't have a surplus at the end of year or the end of month with a deficit of 26%, but that's what it gives us. So I'm just going with the gut. I know that we don't have good things with the tourism. These are the ones that I basically vetoed. I believe we are going to get we already had the government input on what these train connections are gonna do, but I can't see it here, so it may have gone past me already. These are the guys complaining about the social benefits for having a family, but I believe this would not be a complaint if the boost for one child is like 800, and for three it's like 1,800, and we increase the social benefits by 5,000. So I don't think that would actually happen, but perhaps it would. Perhaps it would. And with this level of population growth and fertility rate, we don't really need to boost this thing. Soon as we significantly improve the healthcare system, the fertility rate went up, and the social services. They are going to get the vote on it, but I'm pretty sure that I won't be going through. This is indeed a good number. Self-fragrant fiber. This guy is complaining, but take a look at this number. We have gained in a year 800 billion on a 4,000 billion total, so it's pretty good. Our industry is the size of the Czech Republic. Trade balance is going to hell though, because people have actual money to buy shit, and our industry isn't producing it fast enough. No, I don't want to involve the army in that. How very hard for you. Somebody insulted you. Boo-hoo. Boo-hooeth. Whoeth boo. So I'm not gonna see the infrastructure opinion of the ministers because it was in one of those tabs that I probably just clicked to close. So we'll see. Still don't have a nuclear power plant. Now this is another matter. When they start fighting the police, we do this. Hello, Namibia. And that's what I thought. 78 voted against. Still too authoritarian. I'm gonna have to, stick around with Iran, Syria, North Korea, and Iceland, and Russia. That's very unfortunate. But that's what happens when you start doing state capitalism. There's a historic reason why state capitalist countries are generally not liked. But still, I would have expected them to at least dialogue with me. But having listened to real world politics, I'm not surprised that they don't. School is becoming easier again. They're throwing rocks at windows and shit. And the police have been sent in. If it boils over into something that the police can't control, then I'll send in the military. But for now, it's just the police. I tried to do a situation where the army and police are always sent at the same time. And the job of the army is to make sure that the police don't overstep their boundaries. But unfortunately, the army near always sided with the police, and that's not what I intended. So I'm only sending in the police. And here's the report. 7 dead, and the police are overloaded. Send in the military. So I will send in the military. That's what happens when you propose liberalization in a communist country. That shit goes wrong. But if I were to overrule them and force these laws into effect, the effect would be a constant and consistent revolt. Now they just revolt when the laws are being talked about, and then they go back to calmness. National service is now small, a lesser demand or whatever. Companies still can't get tax exemption by building retirement funds for their workers, which is kind of weird. But I understand it. Dictatorial policy, because I'm voting for laws that people dislike. And no, I won't resign. Thank you. Deposed. Next guy. Uutta putkea kuin vanha putkea. Demonstrations against security policy. This is a little bit weird because I just allowed the best illegal immigrants into the country, but I suppose they are protesting the fact that probably some of these laws, such as the subsidy for going home, probably didn't go through. And there's once again the laxist gun laws and the pacifists and the anti-racism guys once again complaining, that everybody isn't anti-racist, but there's only so much I can do. Hunters are demanding to go back to the bows, and only 300 people responded. And the guys opposing all kinds of hunting, which is what the laws suggested, that hunting weapons should be legal, is 33,000. So you see which group is larger. They don't like guns in this country. Main labor unions are calling for a strike because, liberalization. Employers and once again, laxist gun laws. The rent law didn't go through. Nice, they got their adoption rights. This one didn't go through. People were actually averagely interested. This one didn't go through. This didn't go through. A high number of turnout, but it didn't go through. And they want some kind of control on teachers, which is not at all that surprising. 100% support, but people are still rebelling. Let's see what Namibia wants. So you are suggesting that I sell this stuff to you at 87 when average is 83 and you're paying 113. So through goes that one went through. Here's your cup of coffee. And this is because the marriage right didn't go through, because I didn't veto the people. And these are all roughly the same reasons. They are protesting because I didn't veto the public votes. And this is National Family Committee, which is probably because I removed the child support. And the sit-in is for gun laws. And my friends are complaining that I'm making too much of a fuss and hustle. And that's no surprise. And that's no surprise. And that's no surprise. So that seems to be the last of the liberalization thing. And the strike is over. Medical syndicate strike. It's weird that they're striking when we have a life expectancy rise of like 5 years to a year lived. That's technical immortality. The longer you live in the country, the longer you'll live in the country. And, this one didn't go through. I was closed though. And they're complaining about my family, but they can go fuck themselves because of various reasons. And these gay communities are protesting that none of their reforms went through, which isn't surprising for them to protest about. But, you know, there's only so much that the people will liberalize even in a good time. You need to wait a few years, and perhaps under a new government. And these are, once again, because I'm not doing anything to even remotely talk with my ministers or government people. They're protesting that I'm being a dictator, because the lobbyists for the various countries that want to have a say in my policy are not being consulted. It means that they feel left out, which means people will see me as a dictator. Now these guys had the smart idea of killing some of my guys with a tarantula. We can now try to dismantle their organization. 1-for-1. Cuba and somebody else is going to war. It'll show up here who they're fighting with soon. Maximum school age. It should be minimum age for graduation, actually, because nobody's forcing you not to attend adult education centers. But I understand their point. They aren't ones who would prefer to see 15-year-olds in the work market. I understand their point. You don't always get what you want. But the voting age reform, I think, would go through if it was possible to propose, but due to being in a voting cycle, it's not going to go through. Thank you. Put a lot of effort into it. I know. The Fool, the tarot sign. You are at the beginning of the learning of magical powers. That's what I thought. The Fool card. So it is Cuba versus Bahamas. Okay. Interesting. I think that would go bad for Cuba because everybody likes to vacation at the Bahamas. But you do you. You do you. I'm not going to get involved. I have better things to deal with. Strike of teachers is over. And no, I'm not going to send the thing. Did you notice how quickly the little revolt calmed down? How quickly the little thing calmed down when I sent in the military. 74% of the organization got fucked. Ha! Serves you right. That's what you get. These strikes are still ongoing. Public finances are being complained about because, no discernible unemployment. We could stand to shorten the work week just to show, to take a piss on the European Union, but that would do this to our GDP per capita, so no. We will be content at being the same level as the European Union. And this once again does its back and forth. Eventually, it will probably notify us that we're taking like 5,000 billion in debt because we run out of a surplus of the privatization of the government sectors, which gave us a massive amount of money. And then we're going to have to increase the value-added tax, but we'll see. 1 point of value-added tax seems to be about 0.25 to 0.2% of the growth rate, so I believe we can manage it, and this is still improving. It's going well. Nobody's having a worldwide economic meltdown. We obtained the majority. We still can change these because we are in an election. It'll be like a few days, I think. the Bahamas, one at the UN. There we go. This, I believe, should be 2 years. I'm gonna go through. That's proportional, it's good. This should be 1 year, but I'm gonna try 3 years. I'm gonna go through. Unlimited, but I believe there should be perhaps some limits there. And this needs to be 2 turns. Ah, it might actually go through. Oh, voting age is already 15. Didn't know that. And I believe this is good. And then there's no loss here. And then there's the main issue, which is that the head of state's wage is a little bit high. Considering that the average government employer makes about 150,000 of these Kazakhstan units a month, let's put this at 500,000. That's still a sizable drop. And I don't care what the parliament says, because I will do this personally. And this will be by universal suffrage. I think that might actually go through. But they might show their discontent at me by voting no. So that's all of the parliamentary reforms. And that should be final step of the liberalization campaign. We're gonna get a lot of support from the people for lowering our personal wage. That was way too high. It may also have a limiting effect on the, good for you, may also have a limiting effect on the inflation, because the rich people will feel a little wrong being paid more than the head of state, but not by much. So we'll see. This hasn't come in yet, but we will expect it to come in soon. Yes. This is because I'm not doing anything with talking to the government. Just got elected and then got deposed. It seems a little weird. And there's the next election cycle. That didn't take long. Actually, you can do the government for me. I just need the ministers to do their job when I tell them to. Not really interested in talking with 1,000 ministers about 1,000 things with this interface. We will see if I actually ever change my opinion. They like a long head of state mandate. Nice. Parliament is shorter though. We can try. See if we get anything. No, thank you. You can stay in your position. I know I'm not a communist, sorry. This one was a calm sit-in and it's over. They were very polite. They didn't break any windows or attack any police officers. Well, yeah. Because we haven't increased the defense budget, but we are growing as an economy. The percentage in the defense budget is going down. I will play until the next budgetary thing comes in, and then we'll see. People voted to have universal suffrage for the president, which makes sense. It used to be that the parliament votes for the president and the president has the power to dissolve the parliament, which didn't seem very democratic to me. That seemed like a bad idea. These numbers aren't completely accurate with the real world situation, but you takes what you can. No, I'm not gonna order the police to intervene in a strike. You got the right to strike. And yes, you can appoint that minister. And this is the standard. You're gonna lose the power, and I'm gonna be, possessing the next guy in power. Strike is over. Country is calm again. Now we're slightly below what it was originally, but we're still doing pretty well. Liking the stock numbers. Not liking these two numbers, by the way. Crude oil is 30% of the national sales, while processed fuels is only 8%, and fossil electricity is 5.5%. That means that we're a producer of basic goods, and we should refine the basic oil into, petroleum and sell that. The key to industrialization is usually to find what your country produces that's, low on the production, low on the improvement scale, and then boost it up by one step by doing things. Finally, the research center is complete. We're gonna get the budget in on this first of next month, and then we see what the real numbers are. It's really calm. We built up a lot of expensive things, which may end up tanking our economy, but we'll see. And these guys did one terrorist attack again, so we dismantled 38% of their organization. It's rare to get the full dismantlement, but you get enough. Hunting Bureau guys out. Syria still doing its thing. Cuba is at war with almost everybody now because they tried to invade Bahamas. Corn-based plastics for India. And we didn't get anything from Russia. I'm not gonna increase the budget, and you know it. You already have like 20% of the state budget. This is pretty good, but it's time to improve quite a lot. This is well good. There's only a few countries ahead of us, and I'm not sure if we want to be the best country with that because it stinks of government employees. Budget's about to come in, and then we see a lot of interesting numbers. That's actually, this number is also interesting, but I was looking for this number. This is a little unpredictable because we don't really have the money to pay like 100,000 in Social Security, which would remove that, but we still need to boost it a little bit because I don't like 8% being, critically poor. It's not good. There we go. We got a little bit of debt in the last quarter, and we now need to increase the value added tax, but that I will leave for the next one because I believe these numbers are good enough. We are doing pretty well. We're almost catching the Philippines, and we're ahead of Ukraine. The average country in the ECO has 0.2, while the average world country has 0.5. So we're okay. So let's hope that the save game doesn't get corrupted this time. It does. This maybe last time I tried this. So that's the end result of our little experiment. GDP is still going up, pretty dramatically so. And we are still having a pretty good growth rate. And I believe our interest rate can still be lowered somewhat, but not by much. Inflation is tanking because growth rate is tanking. And this is about the size of it. So everybody gets around 100,000 more a year. We're at Latvia's level of GDP per capita. And we're almost at world average, even though our economy is not that great. So here it is. This seems to be the prediction. We will see the next 6 months in a while, but this feels like cautiously that it would work, but we need to see how far the value-added tax, now that we ran out of the public thing and public money stockpile from the privatization, that we need to check on how far the value-added tax needs to be increased, if that will be sufficient to completely kill the economy. But we were looking at perhaps 5%. If we can manage between 3 and 5% economic growth with the whole, unemployment, poverty, life expectancy, child mortality, etc., rates going the right way and fast, it might be worth it. So this is about the extent of it. So I hope this will be sufficient. It seems to me that it may be, but we will see. So thank you for participating. So that's about it. Thank you for participating.